Cool. So welcome everyone. We are Type Electives. We are a school that's online school that's trying to shape the future of type. We're co-founded by Lin Yoon and myself. We offer courses that go beyond traditional type design education. The courses that range from live online classes to sometimes in-person classes, and they're all generally focused on letter forms, including type design, lettering, and creative technology. We like to work with faculty that approach their practice from a place of criticality, respect, and love. And we're really excited to work with students that are interested in exploring a future that's founded in those principles. So today we have a first lecture of our spring series, where we invite new and established voices to share their stories, knowledge, and ideas with the community. The theme for this series is community and collaboration, and we have 4 amazing lectures coming up. The first one is today. I'll let Lynn speak more a little bit about today's lecture, but just to give you a preview of what's coming, we have Dr. Huda Abifares with the CAT Foundation speaking next Friday, and then we have Polymode also speaking on April 12th about their work and their collaboration with institutions in the cultural sector, and then also Futurist on April 19th. This last talk was actually scheduled for next week, but it's postponed until April 19th. So just giving you a heads up. And for the summer, we have a few things in the works, but we're gonna let you know pretty soon. Just keep an eye on the newsletter and on our website. We have some fun stuff coming up. So with that, I want to pass the mic along to Lynn to introduce really quickly Women in Type and our speakers for today.
All right, we are super excited to welcome Women in Type. And Woman in Type is a project led by type designer Flavia, who is with us today as moderator for this panel. And Woman in Type have the mission of empowering, inspiring, and supporting female identifying designers by publishing their work, fostering community, and enabling access to knowledge and tools that can help them conquer new spaces and leadership positions. A proverbial little claps. And I wanted to give you all a quick introduction of everyone on the panel, although they will give you all more information about them shortly. And first of all, we have Flavia. She's an award-winning type designer and visual artist from Rio de Janeiro, currently based in Berlin. Passionate in promoting gender equality and celebrating the diversity of artistic movements in Latin America, she actively collaborates with fellow female designers and infuses Brazilian cultural references into her independent projects. Next, we have Tida, who is an independent creative director and designer. She has worked with a wide range of clients, including Apple, the New York Times, MoMA, Uniqlo, Google Creative Lab, LVMH, all the amazing places. She's the creative director of Tidal Magazine, an independent biannual fashion and pop culture magazine, and also teaches typography at Cooper Union in New York City. Next up, we have Inga. Inga is an independent type designer based in Berlin who divides her time between commissioned work for international clients and self-initiated projects. Her work focuses on designing typefaces that are easy to use and have great visual impact at the same time. And she is especially interested in modern reinterpretations of old typefaces, giving a typeface its own character, and most importantly, not repeating Inga herself. And last but not least, we have Ayaka. Ayaka is based in Brooklyn and in Tokyo, so that's a big span to cover. And Ayaka has built a career in graphic and type design over more than 15 years, contributing to the visual identities of global brands through her work at agencies such as Creech, Row & Co., and NR 2154. So please give everyone a huge warm welcome, and I will pass off the mic to Flavia.
Sweet. Hi, everyone. Since Lynn did a beautiful introduction, I think we can just jump right in and start with our presentations. So I'll give the mic to Tida.
Thank you, Flavia. And thank you, Lynn and Juan, for inviting us today. We're super excited to be here. We thought we would start by talking more about our design influences and our career trajectories and less about our specific day-to-day work, and really talk about the context in which we work and how our career came to be, and how that all ladders up to this really special collaboration that we have with one another. So Flavia, once you have the presentation shared, we can jump right in. But I thought I'd talk about, to start with my family, starting with my parents. So this is a slide of these identification cards from the ICM, which is an organization within the United Nations. But to back up for a second, my parents are originally from Cambodia, and from 1975 through 1979, they were forced from their homes under the Khmer Rouge genocide. They were very lucky to survive. They were able to flee Cambodia in 1980, and they lived in a refugee camp in Thailand for about 4 years. And my older brother, Kun, was also born in that refugee camp. So you can see his baby photo there on the right. Right, the image that you're seeing is, again, those like identification cards that help them immigrate from the refugee camp in Thailand to the US. So on the next slide, you can see how far they had to travel from all the way from Cambodia and Thailand and that sort of Southeast Asian region all the way to Richmond, Virginia, which is where they were granted asylum. So I was born in Richmond, Virginia, a few years later. Growing up, I really looked up to my older brother, and you know, just like many other children of immigrants, we really wanted to fit in with the other American kids around us. So we looked a lot at popular culture as our way to sort of fit in and assimilate with the people around us. You know, at that time, my brother introduced me to all of his favorite movies. A lot of it was like TV shows and music. He really loved like Tupac and Jay-Z and Green Day. But I didn't start to find my own identity and start to find the things that I really liked until about middle school. And that's when I found the thing that genuinely interested me, which was the Backstreet Boys. So for those of you who don't know, this was a boy band in the late 90s and early 2000s, which was extremely popular at the time. They made a lot of cute pop songs, and they had good dance moves, like you can see here. And I was totally obsessed. I really dove into their sort of identity and how they made music and why they existed. And I wanted to know everything about them. So at that time, again, this is in the early 2000s, a lot of the things that I would look into were these magazines. So there was Tiger Beat, Bop, this one on the right is called Big. And it was really the first time that I started to really covet pieces of graphic design. You can see here, it's very energetic. There's tons of color. Pretty much every influential pop icon was featured. So I had so much fun sort of spending time with these layouts and looking at, you know, all the ways that graphic design sort of influence one another in these spaces. But as, you know, the Backstreet Boys became more popular and influential, especially for young people, they started to appear in more like sophisticated and revered publications like the Rolling Stone here. And so I was then introduced to these types of publications as well. And so as their tastes sort of matured and became more elevated, so did mine. And you can see here, there's a very distinct difference in the visual language here. You can see the photography is a lot more sophisticated. It's a lot more intentional, even with the way the type is being used, the way the language is being used. So it really was like a very influential moment for me to see how, again, the graphic design and popular culture really influence one another. And as a middle schooler, this led me to Photoshop. So at the time, my brother had a pirated version of Photoshop on our family computer. So I would take these images of the Backstreet Boys that I would see in Rolling Stone, and I would start playing with them and adding type on top of the images and manipulating the images and creating these posters that I would post on Backstreet Boys forums. And I had so much fun doing it. And I had all these online friends who were on these Backstreet Boys forums who were excited about it. And eventually someone asked me if they could pay me to make a poster, which was you know, a big wake-up call for me, because then I realized that this could actually be a career that could be something that I could pursue professionally. So I mean, it all stems back from the Backstreet Boys. And today I'm really grateful to say that I'm still doing a lot of that type of work with the magazine that I work on called Title. The magazine itself is a passion project. It's entirely self-funded. I work on it outside of my paying commercial projects, but it's a ton of fun. It reminds me a lot of my middle school days where I was just playing with image and type together. And it's similar in that it really captures a very specific moment and pop culture. And, you know, the magazine itself, it doesn't take itself too seriously, which I really enjoy. It's a very forgiving and open creative space for everyone involved. And, you know, speaking more broadly to this idea of collaboration, it's the ultimate form of that, right? So it's a culmination of art direction, photography, typography, writing, even, you know, production, like hair and makeup and styling. And it sort of becomes this physical object that encompasses all of those disciplines, which I find really gratifying. And it's really exciting to be able to put that out into the world. And again, like, it just speaks to the power of collaboration in a really succinct way. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me, and what led me to this moment in my career. And I'll let Inga take it away.
Hi, my name is Inga. I am a freelance type designer living in Berlin. I'm originally from Braunschweig, which is a very old and boring city in Germany. It's only 2.5 hours away from Berlin, but I rarely visit. Here's a little mood board about my visual landscape growing up. And when I was preparing this presentation, I thought about how my work is influenced by my hometown and childhood. And I can see the pragmatic aspect reflected. Maybe the connection is pragmatism with a little bit of something. I need to think more about that. But what got me into designing was at the age of 15, a friend of mine had a hip hop crew and they needed flyers. So I made some, and those are from the internet that you can see. Mine are sadly lost. My oldest brother is a graphic designer, so I knew a little bit about Photoshop, and we also had a pirated version on our family computer. Yeah, but I loved the typeface impact, and I loved all of the effects in Photoshop, all the shiny shine. Anyway, I studied communication design and time-based media, also in Braunschweig, and I studied it long and hard. The first few years, I explored a little bit of everything from photography, illustration to motion graphics and analog and digital 3D stuff. I also did an experimental film about the interpretation of the shape and sound of the Latin alphabet. So a lot of energy was being spent on doing anything besides working with letters exactly. The first thing that I was really hooked on during my bachelor studies was typography. I spent days fiddling around with layouts, the line spacing, combining typefaces, finding the right size and weight. And here's another project from that time. It was all very gray, but to my defense, plain and simple typography was a vibe back then, and there, at least, at that university. Yeah, and at that time I wanted to become a book designer, although I don't even love books that much, but I really enjoyed fiddling around with type. I spent a lot of time in the letterpress workshop, working with old fonts only. You can see a screenshot from the digital font library from the computers in the university. And I guess I thought people stopped designing typefaces in 2002 because the newest typeface was from then. But then after 4 years of studying graphic design, Dan Reynolds came to my university and taught a design theory class. But what blew my mind was that he is a type designer. And so I finally realized that designing typefaces is still a thing. And I wanted to try that myself. And Now it all goes very quick. I did an internship at Font, which was a type foundry in Berlin, and then designed my first typeface, which also became my bachelor project, which you can see here. And after that, I moved to The Hague in the Netherlands and did the type and media master program. This is my graduation project, Magnet. So once I knew about type design, I didn't do anything else from then on. Magnet was later published by Frere Jones Type. And in the meantime, I also released some typefaces on future fonts, Mesa, Condensed, and Zetkin. And I have new typefaces planned and updates also planned, and they are coming when I have the time. But I spent most of my time on client work. And here you can see some of the projects I have been a part of. Yeah, and that's all from my behalf, and I'm glad that graphic design students know more about type design nowadays. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ayaka. I'm a graphic designer and type designer, and I'm currently in Brooklyn. I studied type at Cooper's condensed and extended program back in 2017, which is where I met Tida and Flavia as my TAs. And similar to Tida, I work mostly on branding and editorial design projects with a focus on type design. And I've been working in New York for about 15 years now, but I'm originally from Japan. So before the late 80s, Japan was still a pretty secluded and traditional country. And I was one of the first people in my family to really be fully exposed to Western pop culture growing up. And I was the first person in my family to also start speaking English. So here you can see on the left image is my grandmother, my uncle, my mom. The center is my mom carrying me, and then on the right is little me. My grandma was especially my big inspiration growing up. She was displaced from Hiroshima during the war and had to start a new life in Tokyo in the 60s. And my grandparents opened a general store 65 years ago in Tokyo. And after my grandpa passed away, my grandma took over and turned it into something that she felt passionate about. So she turned the general store into a makeup boutique. And this store is really special to us. My grandma grew up there, and I visited almost every weekend. And my grandma always looked stunning. And just as much as I was mesmerized by her amazing, amazing skin, I was also so excited to look at all the beautiful makeup and packaging that she carried. And one of the brands that really stood out to me was Shiseido and their custom hand-lettered logos, the Art Nouveau inspired illustrations, the gold foil labels and ribbons. Everything just looked like jewelry to me. And Shiseido also had these magazines that my grandma used to carry, which had these really colorful and edgy covers. And I don't think I realized it at the time, but if 25 years later, this is something that really inspires me in my design practice. And yeah, and speaking of obsessions, my true obsession was this show called Sailor Moon. And gosh, I loved Sailor Moon growing up. This was she was such a klutz and so full of heart and empathy. And my biggest dream growing up was to have this long blonde pigtails. And I was so disappointed when my mom told me that I would never naturally grow blonde hair. So that was a big deal. And one thing that fascinated me about Sailor Moon was how she became stronger the more friends joined her to fight. And wow, I loved the vibrant colors of the show. It was just so beautiful. And every frame you could see the love that the animators put into it. Yeah, and Sailor Moon originally started as a comic published in these monthly magazines. In the 90s, before digital art was common, every chapter was drawn with ink pens and watercolor. And every month, Tiny Me would go to the bookstore and collect these huge issues. There was like 2 inches deep and probably about a tabloid size for each of these books. And so I could immediately read the latest Sailor Moon chapters. And these mangas were so poppy and so campy. And during middle school, I started by drawing my own mangas with my friends and eventually started drawing logos for each of the stories that we made too. So yeah, together with the traditional aesthetic of Shiseido and the Sailor Moon mangas. These two things have been such a big inspiration for me and influences on me today. And I'd say my work sits in the intersection of intricate illustrations and poppy graphics, feminine elegance and campy fashion, and traditional Japanese versus Western modern. And just like how every manga had its own identity and world that it created, branding and editorial work allows me to do the same thing, like playing with type and visual elements to create individual worlds for every project. And yeah, just like how Sailor Moon became stronger with her friends, I'm also so excited about what Flavia is doing with her initiative at Type Women in Type. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Flavia.
Thanks, Ayaka. Hi, everyone. I'm Flavia. As some people may say, the mastermind behind Women in Type, but I'd rather say the crazy mind. Now it's time for us to travel below the equator to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, more specifically to the north side of the city, to a neighborhood called Tijuca, a name that comes from the Tupi language, meaning rotten water or swamp. Funny enough, Berlin, where I currently live, it's also a formerly swampy land. But anyway, Tijuca is home of the largest urban forest in the world, from where this picture was taken. And growing up, I'd spend most of my weekends exploring this national park and its rainfalls with my mom and my brother. So when I adopted my dog last year, it felt fitting to name Making Ties to Home. So this is Tiju. I was born and lived until my early 20s, 2 blocks away from a square called Praça Sans Penha that was projected in 1948 by Roberto Burle Marx, a Brazilian landscape architect who you probably know from the mosaic in the beachfront of Copacabana and Ipanema. Rio is famous for its landscapes between the mountain and the sea, but also its modernist architecture and the full bloom of the new concrete movement, home of revolutionary artists such as Amilcar de Castro, Elliot Sica, and Ligia Clark, who inspired my final project during Type Cooper, the type family with the same name, Ligia. Then, after graduating from PUC-Rio in visual communication, I moved to São Paulo, where I began specializing in editorial design, working over a decade with fashion magazines. Much different from Rio, São Paulo is known as a concrete jungle, but many of the artists and vernacular references, so when switching from Portuguese to English, the R is always a mess, but let's go. That shaped my visual gears. Were either born or worked there, as the city is considered the country's economical capital. In 2013, Brazil was hit yet again by a bad economic crisis, and after losing my job, I decided a change of scenery was needed. So I moved to New York and started my journey in the type design world. I lived there for about 7 years and had the privilege of working and collaborating with a bunch of cool people, sharing my type between commission and self-initiated projects. Then COVID hit, Trump was president, and I realized I had to move again. The next stop was Berlin, and it's wild that it's been 3 years already. But shortly after I got here, we were struck by a long lockdown in winter, which really stormed my mental health. Even though it was quite a productive time when I released Francis and Ligia Sands, being stuck inside in front of the computer 8 hours a day, 7 days a week was not working for me. And more, I started missing the creative exchange that was an integral part of my past work life as an art director. So I decided to take a break from design and went bartending. I want to experience the city, to meet and talk to people, to be more social. And I will call it a sabbatical, but instead of traveling the world, I just traveled to an outlet outside of my main practice. And yes, this was my setup back in 2021. And I got really good at making cocktails, but being behind the bar also taught me a lot about building communities. While doing night shifts, I grasped I could use all of this knowledge to address some of the issues I care about. For some years now, the type industry has patted itself on the back, pointing to the increasing numbers of emerging female designers. Sure, it feels like there are more of us, but in fact, things are quite far from fair. Unfortunately, there's no consolidated data about gender equality in our little bubble. So I decided to do some math based on retail releases in 2023, which put women at around 24% of representation. If that was not bad enough, how many of us actually make a living out of our sales? And how many are in influential or leadership positions? So the initiative Women in Type came together from the desire of owning and representing our stories. In May 2023, we launched phase 1 with 3 collaborative type families, Octavia, Jobin, and Hanai, in partnership with the power trio that just spoke before me, Tida, Inga, and Ayaka. And yes, you may have noticed from their presentations, I intentionally curated a team to show multiplicity, covering 4 continents, the Americas, Europe, and Asia. Octavia is Tida's final project from Type Cooper, a low contrast typeface inspired by titles and credits of film noir from the 1940s and 50s. Jobin is a Vendôme-inspired display typeface based on the lettering from the poster of the movie Orfeu Negro. And Hanai was conceived from scratch with the fashion and editorial industries in mind, with a pool of references that includes early cuts of Caslin, Baskerville, Times New Roman, ITC Garamond, and ITC Grouch. But most importantly, all 3 collaborations had very different processes. And this wonderful experience had pointed me to 3 main lessons that I would love to explore in the following panel. First, that collaboration brings us closer and make us feel more courageous. In a recent interview, I mentioned that I hope Women in Type will be a place to comfort us, welcome us, and allow us to create, interact, and resist. Because I truly believe it's within collectives that we'll find reservoirs of hope and optimism. Second, collaboration is about amplifying voices, and empowering unique perspectives leads to great work. I would not have achieved such an excellent and diverse outcome at the beginning of this project if I hadn't surrounded myself with good people with different mindsets, contexts, and objectives. Lastly, I want to share a quote from the American mycologist Paul Stamets. Open quotes, the core concept of evolution is that through natural selection, the strongest and the fittest survive. But moreover, communities survive better than individuals. Communities rely upon cooperation, and I think that's the power of goodness, the concept of mutual benefit and the extension of generosity. Close quotes. So in my opinion, collaboration is the only answer to fostering a better and more diverse industry. And for that, creating spaces is necessary, dialogue is necessary, and building communities is necessary, one connection at a time. And in case you want to connect with us, here's all of our social handles. And I guess we can just jump into our little chat. And we will save the last 10 to 15 minutes for questions. So if you guys want, you can start firing them in the Q&A thingy. So I guess as we are talking about imbalances a lot, would be interesting to start this conversation hearing your perspectives about entering and navigating the type industry. I know all four of us have been part of this community in different capacities. So I guess I'll start with Tida. Maybe you can share a bit of your perspective as a teacher. Do you feel there is a disconnect between your student population and the professional crowd?
Yeah, thank you, Flavia. That's a great question. The short answer is yes, absolutely. So a lot of times I'm in meetings and professional spaces and a lot of my day-to-day work where I'm either the only woman or the only person of color, or maybe there's only one or two of us. And it's still in at least for me in the sort of art direction graphic design space, there's definitely an imbalance. But then when I walk into my classroom where I teach at Cooper Union, it's the complete opposite. So it is very stark and odd in a lot of ways, but it's also hopeful to see that there's a lot of young people who are really interested to be in the industry. However, I do think there's not a lot of support for marginalized people as they leave school and become professionals. So I wish I understood why, and I wish I had a better understanding of how I could help in that way. But I mean, the best that I can do in my class is really support my students and prepare them as much as I can for the professional world. And a lot of that means like really pushing them and being also like very honest and not sugarcoating things and preparing them for how hard it really is. And I hope that has a little bit of an impact on them. But I do think it is a larger conversation that is hard to pinpoint. And I think through a lot of conversation and again, like honest truths, hopefully we'll start to see that change more quickly. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, there is a stark difference in my day-to-day for sure.
And I guess as you mentioned about being hard to enter, you know, that you're not sugarcoating and it's hard to enter the industry. I would love to hear actually all of your perspectives on how do you felt like trying to be accepted or getting jobs or, you know, just putting the first foot in the type industry. Because for myself personally, a lot of times people come to me and say, oh no, it's easy because you're in New York, you did type at Cooper. So they think people just knocked at my door, and that's not the true at all. Like I had to do a lot of the hard work and introduce myself to everyone that I could, go to all of the conferences and, you know, do a lot of networking. So I would love to hear more from all of you guys, how this felt.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from like working at a design agency point of view, being, starting with graphic design and then getting into type. I mean, I did go to type at Cooper, and school does really help because it's not just like a place to learn, but it's also a community of people that you get to meet through that. And it doesn't have to be like, Cooper Union necessarily. It can be like online classes and like one-day workshops, and then you just meet people that are share the same interests. So you sort of like you grow your community over time. But like getting into type, because I'm not a full-time type designer, I think I realized is that for me, it's really important that I take the initiative to really bring in that sort of type work into the branding work that I do. So like if I'm working at an agency and with a team, like it'll be my job to try to pull references or inspirations, encourage other designers to think like, hey, is this an opportunity where we can do custom type? Can we do something really interesting with the logo? And then, just drive that vision over so that we can do more of this sort of like type projects. So it's definitely not something that's like handed to you. It's just something that, no matter how big or small the project is just taking the initiative to, yeah, make it happen.
Tida, Inga, would you like to also mention a little bit more how you felt navigating the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I have always felt like I've had to prove myself in every room, right? Like, and how I'm perceived and how I want to assert myself. And it's like a constant conversation I'm having internally. I don't think that ever goes away. Like it's always very present, at least in the way that I work. So a lot of it is just faking it. I just pretend to be smart and like that I know what I'm doing, and hopefully people believe me.
Fake
I
it
know
till
it's
you
not the
make it.
best advice, but I think you just have to you kind of force your way in a lot of times, and it's hard, but yeah, you really have to um let go of your ego a little bit too and just be vulnerable.
Yeah, I guess I can also give a +1 about that, even outside of the type industry, you know, like going to a completely different world when I was bartending. I also had to prove myself every time I entered the room. It's also a very male dominant industry. So I guess, you know, just being born as a woman make things a bit harder.
I feel like I was a bit lucky because I found work right after graduating from Type in Media. I think also because it's a good program and you get some attention just from graduating from that. But it definitely had some funny comments when I was talking to some men from the industry here in Berlin on some type design meetups. They were surprised that I did a typeface, although I had just graduated from a master degree, but stuff like that. But I mean, that's just personal interactions, and I got work, so I think I cannot complain on that part, but I definitely feel that people underestimate me too, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like I was also very lucky. I mean, I guess it's a mix of lucky, but also doing hard work, right? But I also figure out my ways and got commission projects quite quickly. But of course, like we are always, I'm sure we always need to prove harder. And I guess, you know, both me and Inga work as full type designers, but Ayaka and Tida have more of a are more immersed into the design at large community. So I guess I would love to hear from you if our fame of being exclusionary is true. I mean, the type design community. Do you feel like it feels exclusionary? Do you miss seeing more connections between graphic design and type designers?
I certainly did not have any connections with type designers until I went to Type at Cooper, and I really understood the process and started to meet a lot more people through that program, and it felt like a lot more accessible in that way. But before that program, I don't think I would have been like privy to who to speak to or like who to reach out to, and who are like the independent type designers to follow and get to know better. But now that I do, like it's something that I encourage with either my colleagues, even with my students. It is less exclusionary now, I think, because it's also a lot more accessible, right? Like Lynn and Juan, for example, like this amazing sort of school that you established is one way that is really progressing it. But I think it can feel exclusionary, especially when you feel like a novice, right? And there's always going to be type designers who are they have, we joked about this within our group that they all have like hundreds of manuscripts that they pull from their own personal collection that is, really like cerebral. But I think once you start to know the process more and more and understand the people behind it, we are all kind of just trying our best, right? And it's really disarming.
Yeah, I agree. I had the same experience as well. And then I think the more I got to meet like, type designers and learn about the process, like the more I realized that there is more places for collaboration. And I think that one thing that is super amazing is that, with these schools, for example, or like softwares like Glyphs, opening up the door for graphic designers to start making and playing with type. I think it's really amazing that like the graphic designers, creative directors, art directors are starting to become more and more interested in making type as well. And not saying that the graphic designers can easily do type or anything like this, but like when you work on a branding project, it usually comes through a design agency, and it usually comes from top down, from like the creative director, you know, putting the vision together, and the team leading it, like, you know, manifesting what that ideas can be. And so I think that as more graphic designers are interested in type, like, you know, bringing the sort of like type ideas in, then that will allow for more collaborations and bringing type designers to, you know, make those ideas happen. So I'm hoping that, again, more and more this will be more common.
Yeah. And then I guess Inga, talking about, you know, the collaboration, like following what Ayaka just mentioned, you know, that everything comes from a client, an agency. Do you feel there's space for collaboration in your jobs with, you know, like when you were hired as a contractor, or there is a mentality of you being just like the technician?
I'm mostly hired by type designers themselves, so they have a clear imagination of what they want. They can communicate that as well really clearly to me. And most of my projects are kind of strict in terms of how it should end up looking like, or a lot of my projects are also just extending family typeface families, and also or drawing the bold to an existing typeface and stuff like that. So not so much room. But last year, for example, I had a project exactly like that, and at the very end, the client said he feels like this is as much my typeface family now as his, because he felt like my influence in it was so big. And it took me by surprise, because I hadn't really realized that, because I thought I was just drawing everything, like just everything. And then in the end, this makes the design as well. I mean, I think it's underestimated how much the drawing process is also shaping how it ends up looking. And also last year I was hired specifically because the client wanted my voice to be heard in this project, or seen in this project. So they clearly wanted a collaboration, and they were excited about my opinions and my ideas. Yeah, so there are some projects like that for sure.
That's really awesome. I think like now, after I guess 6 years since I finished Type of Cooper, or maybe 7, I don't know. Sorry, I'm not gonna make that math now. I have been also start to be hired for my voice and for what people identifies me, my work to be focused on. But I guess this is quite rare. And I still have questions of my own to go through with this beautiful ladies. But if you guys want to put some things in the QA, I'm going to start checking. Someone is asking how we handle having an online presence on a scale of 1 to 10, how much we hate Instagram, or we feel like we need it. I actually really like this question because well, in my humble opinion, I think it's very necessary these days. There's no way of us surviving with just type specimens, doing the same way it was done in the 1800s. So any of you would like to maybe comment on this?
I absolutely hate Instagram. I'll say that.
Yeah, same.
I think it's you know, it's one of those, like, people treat it like a business card, as if it's like they know everything about you just from looking at your account, kind of thing. I would say that, like, luckily a lot of my work personally has come through friends and like people that I know. more than people seeing things on Instagram. So I think it's overrated, but I understand the importance of it.
I mean, I hate it too, but I think it's a necessary bad thing, you know.
I don't know. I feel like as long as you have some sort of online presence, but maybe I'm old school.
Yeah, I agree with both of you, Flavia and Ayaka. It's like a love-hate relationship. You have
Yeah.
to have something, but at the same time, every single time I have to post something, it's dreadful. But I know I need to. So I hope that answers your question. I think yes, you should have one, but I don't think you should put away it so heavily amongst, all the other work that you're doing.
I did one post last year. That's it.
Idol. You're my idol.
Mhm.
I feel like it's a means to show people that you're actually a person and alive. That's it for me.
Yeah, you're real. Exactly. You're not fake bots or whatever.
Someone else is also asking ways for them to support women in type as a community of creatives from different disciplines and spread the word around. I would say in our case, you could start by buying our typefaces, supporting, the work we're doing, but also sharing the work of women, giving more spaces to women, to give lectures, invite them, to do more stuff, basically. I think, or even that's, I think there's so many ways, but like this is the kind of like question that just fires my brain, and I'm like, woo. What do you ladies think?
I know. I think like when I am selecting a typeface, I tend to think as the type designer and typeface as a collaborator on my project. And so, if the work is relevant and you relate somehow to the type designer and it's relevant to the project, like why wouldn't you, right? Like I think it's just about a matter of being thoughtful and really seeing the people behind the process. And that doesn't mean just us four, right? Like there are so many ways that you can support marginalized voices within the type design community. Yeah, so I think it's really like what Flavia said is just being thoughtful about it and not just picking the first best thing that comes your way and maybe just spending an extra 15 minutes browsing Instagram maybe and finding a cool typeface.
Good point. Use the Instagram for the good. Do we still draw type regularly for fun? I don't, I need to say, because I don't have time, unfortunately. While I'm building this project and also have now 7 type families to finish, there's no time for fun. But what about you guys? Do you have like a sketchbook or something that you doodle regularly?
No, I also think it's work. It's not fun, it's work. It's just,
Good point.
yeah. I don't like this romanticization of, yeah, Sunday sketching session. No, my Sundays are, I hope I cannot work on Sundays. And I think you need to be real. I mean, it's work, and you have to also be careful not to work too much. You have to get a time off, and yeah, I think that is super important, and it's not talked about enough, or people present themselves as if they were always only working, and that's not healthy at all. So
Well,
I have other things that I can do for fun.
have a counter spicy comment back to I do try to sketch. I am not the Sunday with a coffee kind of way, but just with like as a not like a full-time type designer and working on more branding things, there's a lot more demand that you have to do for clients that aren't necessarily just designing, but doing production work to, if you start doing art direction, it's just like management work more than anything else. So I think it is important that like when you're drawing type for fun, it's more just the thought of like, how do you make something for yourself again, and reminding yourself like what you like is sometimes very different from the client work that you're doing to answering to other people. So I do, not that I do it religiously, but I do try to think about this more mindfully.
I guess in your case, it's not work because that's not what you do every day on your everyday job, right? I mean, a job I'm saying is like the main career.
Don't get me wrong, I really enjoy drawing type though. It's not terrible.
Yeah, I mean the beginning, right? Like the creation, like the conceptual part, it's always my favorite. And it's usually like the 20% of the fun, and then we spend the other 80% just developing the family and building character set and all of this. But yeah, I for sure also really enjoy exploring on that phase. But yeah, I can't just put myself to draw for fun. Like Inga said, if it's the weekend, and if it's sunny in Berlin, I'm out. I'm in a park, I'm going to a lake, something else. Someone is asking how we can expand our education beyond, the programs like Cooper or KBK or Reading. I think there is plenty of workshops and extended education happening these days. A lot happening online, especially, after the pandemic. So just, try to keep an eye on as many channels as possible, I would say. A lot of independent designers do their own workshops, but also those schools have a lot of programs, and type electives is an option. Obviously, you guys are here. We are running almost out of time. We have 5 minutes, and I'm getting a smoke signal. So I guess I will not go to a last question because there is some more here, but maybe we can just gather our last final thoughts and wrap up. So I'll give the mic and I'll go last, maybe. What do you guys would like to leave this room full of people with some thoughts for the weekend? Nobody wants to.
Well, I'll just say something quickly, which is maybe an obvious takeaway, but collaborating with your friends is one of the best things you can do. And it's easy, it's natural, there's already inherent trust, and being able to support one another, it always leads to better work. So don't be afraid to just jump into something new with your friends. It always leads to some type of learning or expanding of your point of view. Flavia, she encouraged me to release a typeface that I left for dead for many years. So thank you, Flavia. Yeah, so that's kind of my takeaway.
Yeah, same. I mean, in terms of collaboration, it's been amazing working on Hanaya with Flavia, and just like how I was surprised every time with like Flavia would come up with ideas that I would have never thought about, or like look at type in a way that I had never did, and I learned so much. And I think it's amazing when you can like just, not have a pressure of like what this project will be, but just focus on the fun part about it, and like just enjoy the process and see what comes out of it. And you can make anything you want, right? So
Inga.
I don't have anything to add to that. I think it's always valuable to work together with other people, just because it gives you a new perspective on things. You get ideas that you would not have without this. And also it makes you realize how unique the things that you are doing is, because the other person is then surprised what you have done. And then you realize, okay, yeah, this is special. And so you can, I don't know, just it's just a nice reassurance that your ideas are good. And I think that's especially nice when you're working with a friend too, because then you can talk about these things much, much better.
Yeah, I guess I would say that first, just do things that you guys care about, even if it feels like it's impossible or it's hard, or, you know, like having crazy ideas, like I want to change the industry. I want to just have more voices being represented and more diversity. Who said you can, you know, like just try to organize your thoughts, look within your community, your friends, your peers, and go ahead and do what you think it's impossible. Because I knew all of these three before, but I was not like close friends of them beforehand. Some yes, some not. But I'm sure like after our intense collaboration, now we feel like a little family, and I'm really excited to only see this grow with the development of the project and onboarding more and more designers. So yeah, like I said, I think where we are these days, the way the type scene is, community is the only way forward, and collaboration is really important. I hope we made sense, because we covered so much, and I feel like we jumped between so many subjects, and it's hard to just introduce four different people in the same thing. But yeah, thank you very much for you guys that tuned in, and we will try to maybe answer the other questions through social media or email or something. I'll check with Juan and Lynn what's the best way, and let's keep in touch.
Yes, thank you everyone so much. I mean, like, there's a lot of love in the chat, but I think I speak for all of us when this was, you know, it was so inspiring and so touching. And thank you all so much for just being very personal and vulnerable with all of us. So a huge thank you from us and everybody. And yes, like definitely follow them all on social media. Check out their typefaces. We've dropped a lot of links in the chat. All throughout. And if you want other folks to check out this panel talk, we will be recording this. Oh, well, we have recorded this, and it will be uploaded onto the YouTube channel and the website soon. So please stay tuned. And thank you everyone so much. And we hope that you have a great day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.